Hi, I'm Michael Shuster, real estate specialist in the Greater Toronto Area and the surrounding suburbs. If you own a house or a condo or an investment properties, you've probably received a notice recently that you have to submit your online Toronto home vacancy tax declaration. And if you're like most people, considering this is a brand new tax, you probably have a lot of questions. And if you don't have a lot of questions, you probably should, because even if your property is not vacant, you don't want to shrug it off. You have to file or there will be a penalty. So here are all of the important details that you need to know, all summarized for you. Number one, the deadline to submit your declaration if you own a property is February 2nd. Number two, this is not to be confused with a flipping tax or a foreign buyer ban or tax or any of the other things that you've heard about. Those are all different. A house or a condo is deemed to be vacant, and you have to declare it vacant if it has been unoccupied for a total of 6 months or more during the previous calendar year. Number three, if you're a snowbird or you travel for extended periods of time, please note, principal residences can be left unoccupied for up to a total of 6 months throughout the tax year without being subject to the tax. Number five, residential properties will be automatically deemed vacant if the owner fails to make the annual declaration by the deadline and or provide supporting documents. Number six, owners of properties subject to the tax will be issued a vacant home tax notice in March or April, and payment is due May 1st. Number seven, if there's an error in the declaration that you submitted, you can file a notice of complaint if it's after the declaration deadline. Now let's talk real quick about the types of declarations. Number one, the first type of declaration that you can file is occupied as a principal residence of a homeowner. This is a property where you reside, you conduct your daily affairs, receive your mail, pay your bills, etc. You can only have one principal residence. So if status number one applies to you, then you do not have to pay the Toronto vacant home tax. Number two, you can declare that it's occupied as a principal residence of a permitted occupant. A permitted occupant is not a tenant or a subtenant. A permitted occupant may include, but not limited to, a family member or a friend of the registered owner. Now, if status number two applies to you, you don't have to pay the Toronto vacant home tax. Number three is occupied as a tenant or a tenanted property. This is a residential property occupied by a person or people that have a written tenancy agreement, or also known as a lease, in place for a term of at least 30 days or more to occupy the property as a residence. The property must be occupied by one or more tenants for 6 months or more throughout the year. Now, if this status number three applies to you, then you also don't have to pay the Toronto vacant home tax. Number four is vacant with an eligible exemption. Eligible exemptions include death of a registered owner, significant repairs and renovations, the principal resident is in the hospital or seeking external long-term care or medical care, and transfer of legal ownership. If status number four applies to you, you don't have to pay the Toronto vacant home tax. And number five, or the fifth type of declaration that you can make, is you can select it's vacant or deemed and determined vacant. If the property doesn't meet any of the previous four criteria and it has been vacant for 6 months or more, then the Toronto vacant home tax is applicable. Now, what deadlines do you have to keep in mind? There are two dates or two deadlines: the declaration due date and the payment due date. The declaration due date is February 2nd of the year following the taxation year for which the declaration is made. So for example, for taxation year 2022, the declaration is due February 2nd, 2023. And by the way, the city may impose a fine of $250 for declarations made past the due date. The payment due date is the 1st of May of each year following the taxation year for which it's payable. So those are the main highlights. Obviously, with everything new from the government, things will evolve and new things will come out. If you've misplaced your notice in the mail, or you need to make a declaration and don't know where or how, or you didn't get a notice, remember that you have to submit it online by February 2nd. So just in case, I've put a link to the government webpage that you have to use to submit your declaration in the video description below. And of course, if you have questions or you want to stay up to date, remember, you can always call or email me anytime, Mike at TheREguy.ca, or my phone number's below, and I'm happy to answer all of your questions. Thanks for watching.